This story is titled, Friend Asked Me to Be Her Maid of Honor, Then Made Me Pay for Everything, so I quit 2 days before the wedding and took the bridesmaids with me. I'm Sarah, a 29-year-old pediatric nurse from Sacramento, and I never imagined my best friend's wedding would turn into the most dramatic event of my life. Emma and I had been inseparable since our freshman year of college at UC Davis, where we bonded over our shared love of true crime podcasts and midnight coffee runs during finals week. She was always the more outgoing one, while I preferred quieter gatherings and one-on-one conversations. Emma met Tyler, her fiancé, at a charity marathon 3 years ago. He seemed perfect on paper, a 32-year-old pediatrician who volunteered at animal shelters and ran marathons for various causes. I was genuinely happy for them, even though something about Tyler's perfectly curated social media presence and constant name-dropping made me slightly uneasy. Still, Emma was head over heels, and who was I to question her happiness? The wedding planning started 18 months ago, and that's when I first noticed the changes in Emma. The sweet, considerate friend who once drove 3 hours just to bring me soup when I had the flu was slowly being replaced by someone I barely recognized. The transformation wasn't sudden, it was like watching a flower wilt in slow motion, one petal at a time. The bridal party consisted of me as the maid of honor, and 3 other bridesmaids: Ashley, Emma's cousin, 25, Madison, her college roommate, 28, and Olivia, her co-worker, 31. We all had stable careers and comfortable lives, but none of us were prepared for what was about to unfold. Before all this wedding drama, my life was predictably comfortable. I worked regular shifts at the Children's Hospital, spent weekends either catching up on sleep or hiking with my golden retriever, Max, and occasionally dated, though nothing serious ever stuck. I had a small but solid group of friends, a cozy apartment in Midtown, and enough savings to feel secure. Emma was always the one pushing me to live a little more, but I was content with my routine. The first red flag appeared during the engagement party at an upscale restaurant in Napa Valley. Emma had insisted we all chip in for the celebration, which seemed reasonable until we got the bill. Somehow, what was supposed to be a simple dinner turned into a lavish affair with imported champagne and a professional photographer. The final cost? $500 per person, not including our gifts. When Ashley mentioned she'd need time to budget for it, Emma's response was a dismissive laugh and a comment about how real friends support each other's special moments. Little did I know, this was just the beginning of a series of increasingly unreasonable demands that would test not only our friendship but also our financial limits and personal boundaries. The engagement party was merely the prologue to what would become an epic tale of betrayal, manipulation, and ultimately sweet revenge. The real nightmare began 6 months before the wedding when Emma announced she'd booked an exclusive venue in Aspen for a winter wonderland ceremony. None of us had expected a destination wedding, especially since Emma had always talked about getting married in her hometown church. The venue alone was costing her parents a fortune, but Emma insisted that we, the bridesmaids, needed to handle all the smaller expenses. These smaller expenses started piling up faster than autumn leaves. First came the demand for matching Louis Vuitton handbags as bridesmaid accessories, $2,000 each. Then, there were the mandatory spa weekends in San Francisco, the designer dress fittings in Los Angeles, and the casual, pre-wedding photo shoot in Portland. Each event required new outfits, professional hair and makeup, and travel expenses that we were expected to cover. But the turning point came during the bridal shower planning. Emma had given me a list of requirements that made my head spin: rare orchids flown in from Hawaii, a famous pastry chef from New York for the dessert table, and a string quartet for background music. When I suggested something more reasonable, Emma launched into a tearful tirade about how I was trying to ruin her special day. Tyler, who was present during this conversation, sided with her and suggested that if I couldn't handle the responsibilities of being maid of honor, perhaps I should step down. What they didn't know was that I'd already maxed out 2 credit cards trying to keep up with their demands. Madison had quietly confided that she'd taken a second job as a virtual assistant to afford everything, and Olivia had canceled her planned family vacation to Greece. Ashley, who'd recently graduated and was still paying off student loans, had resorted to selling her designer bags collection on consignment. The situation took an even darker turn when Emma's mother, Janet, pulled me aside during a cake tasting session. With tears in her eyes, she revealed that Emma and Tyler had manipulated her and Emma's father into refinancing their house to pay for the wedding. The worst part? She'd overheard Tyler boasting to his groomsmen about how they were planning to use the wedding gift money to pay for their honeymoon in Bali, leaving her parents to handle the massive debt alone. That's when I started noticing other disturbing patterns. Emma's Instagram stories were filled with subtle digs at us bridesmaids, suggesting we weren't committed enough to her vision. She'd started spreading rumors among our mutual friends about how we were being difficult and unsupportive. Tyler, meanwhile, had been spotted having cozy lunches with his ex-girlfriend, but when Olivia tried to bring this up to Emma, she was accused of being jealous and trying to sabotage the wedding. As I lay awake one night, calculating that I'd spent over $15,000 on this wedding so far, I received a group text from Ashley. She discovered something about Tyler that would change everything, and she needed to meet with all of us immediately without Emma knowing. Little did I know, this secret meeting would set in motion a chain of events that would make Emma's precious winter wonderland wedding melt faster than spring snow. We met Ashley at a quiet coffee shop in downtown Sacramento at 11 p.m., long after the regular crowd had gone home. The usually bubbly Ashley looked pale and shaken as she pulled out her phone. Through her job at a prestigious real estate agency, she discovered that Tyler had been secretly touring luxury properties in Miami. This wouldn't have been suspicious except for one detail: he was doing it with his ex-girlfriend Rachel, and they were posing as a married couple. But that wasn't all. Ashley had dug deeper and found that Tyler had been leading a double life. While planning his wedding to Emma in Aspen, he'd simultaneously been making deposits on a beachfront condo in Miami under both his and Rachel's names. The timeline suggested they'd been together the entire time he was with Emma, never truly breaking up as everyone had believed. Madison then shared something equally disturbing. As a marketing coordinator for a luxury car dealership, she'd recently processed a lease agreement for Tyler. The paperwork listed Rachel as his spouse and co-signer dated just 2 weeks ago. Our heads were spinning as we pieced together the elaborate deception. Olivia, who'd been quietly listening, finally spoke up. Her voice trembling, she revealed that she'd seen Tyler and Rachel at a high-end jewelry store in San Francisco when she was there for a work conference. She'd assumed it was an innocent encounter, but now everything made sense. They were picking out their own rings while making us pay for his wedding to Emma. The cruel irony wasn't lost on us. While Emma had been forcing us into financial ruin for her perfect wedding, her fiancé was planning his real future with someone else. The astronomical costs, the endless demands, the guilt-tripping, it all seemed like a calculated plan to drain everyone's resources while setting up his escape. As we sat there, surrounded by empty coffee cups and shattered illusions, I pulled out my own phone and started calculating. Between the four of us, we'd spent nearly $65,000 on this wedding. That didn't include the emotional cost, the strained relationships, the missed opportunities, and the countless hours spent catering to Emma's increasingly outrageous demands. But what truly broke my heart was realizing that Emma, despite her recent behavior, was about to have her world shattered. Despite everything, she was still my friend of 12 years, and she was walking into a trap dressed in white lace and false promises. The question now wasn't just about how to handle Tyler's betrayal, it was about whether to tell Emma the truth, knowing it would devastate her, or to find another way to stop this train wreck of a wedding. As we debated our options, my phone lit up with yet another demanding text from Emma about last-minute changes to the bachelorette party in Vegas. That's when I had an idea, a way to expose Tyler's deception while giving Emma a chance to save face and get revenge on everyone who had wronged us. Looking at my fellow bridesmaids' exhausted faces, I knew we had nothing left to lose. With just 3 weeks until the wedding, we had to act fast. What I didn't realize was that my plan would set off a chain reaction that would make national headlines and change all our lives forever. The bachelorette weekend in Las Vegas became our cover for setting things in motion. While Emma was distracted with her packed schedule of spa treatments and pool parties, which we'd also paid for, we were carefully executing phase 1 of our plan. Madison used her marketing contacts to track Rachel's social media activity, discovering she had booked a flight to Aspen that would arrive the day before the wedding. It seemed Tyler was planning to keep both women in the dark until the last possible moment. Our first move was to protect Emma's parents. I arranged a private meeting with Janet at a small diner outside of town, bringing all the evidence of Tyler's double life. The devastation on her face when she saw the proof was heartbreaking, but it quickly turned to anger when I showed her the transfer records Ashley had found, revealing that Tyler had already begun moving the wedding gift money to a separate account. Janet proved to be an unexpected ally. Within 24 hours, she had contacted their bank and lawyer, managing to freeze the wedding accounts and stop the final payments on the venue. She also discovered that Tyler had convinced Emma to add his name to her personal savings account for wedding expenses, money that had already started disappearing in small increments. Meanwhile, Olivia put her HR skills to good use by contacting Tyler's hospital administration. She didn't reveal the full situation, but asked enough questions about their employee verification process to discover that Tyler had lied about his position. He wasn't a full pediatrician, as he claimed he was still in residency, and had been exaggerating his salary and status to everyone, including Emma. The real genius came from Ashley. Through her real estate connections, she managed to get copies of Tyler's mortgage application for the Miami condo. The documents showed he'd been using Emma's excellent credit score and family connections to secure financing, while listing Rachel as his spouse on internal paperwork. It was a messy trail of fraud that he'd never expected anyone to uncover. But our biggest breakthrough came from an unexpected source. The wedding planner, Melissa, who'd witnessed Emma's bridezilla behavior firsthand, reached out to me privately. She'd overheard Tyler on the phone with Rachel in the venue's parking lot, promising her that the Miami condo would be ready for them right after he handled the situation in Aspen. Melissa, disgusted by his behavior, offered to help us. With just 10 days until the wedding, we had gathered enough evidence to destroy Tyler's carefully constructed house of cards. But simply exposing him wasn't enough. He deserved to feel the same public humiliation and financial pain he'd inflicted on others. Plus, we needed to find a way to help Emma save face and emerge from this situation with her dignity intact. That's when everything nearly fell apart. Emma, increasingly suspicious of our secret meetings and whispered conversations, confronted me after a final dress fitting. Her mascara-stained face and trembling voice made it clear she'd noticed something was wrong. For a moment, I almost told her everything. Instead, I held firm to our plan, knowing that the next phase would either save our friendship or end it forever. What happened next would prove that karma, when properly orchestrated, could be more dramatic than any wedding ceremony Tyler could have planned. 7 days before the wedding, our plan hit its first major snag. Emma announced she'd invited Rachel to the wedding, claiming Tyler suggested it would show maturity and prove there were no hard feelings. The irony was almost too much to bear. What Emma didn't know was that Rachel had already RSVP'd through Tyler, using a different last name. We needed to accelerate our timeline. Madison discovered through her social media monitoring that Rachel had been posting subtle hints about a big surprise coming soon, complete with photos of designer bikinis and Miami sunsets. She was clearly getting impatient with Tyler's double game and might expose everything before we were ready. Then came an unexpected twist that nearly derailed everything. Tyler's best man, Chris, reached out to me privately. Unlike Tyler's other friends, who were just as fake as he was, Chris had a conscience. He revealed that Tyler had borrowed over $30,000 from him for wedding expenses, but had actually used the money for the Miami condo down payment. Chris had accidentally discovered the truth when he overheard Tyler on a video call with Rachel, planning their real life together. This new information gave me an idea. With Chris's help, we orchestrated a bachelor party that Tyler couldn't refuse in Miami. While Tyler thought he was being subtle checking on his future home during the trip, Chris was documenting everything. The photos of Tyler and Rachel together at the condo, reviewing furniture plans and meeting with interior designers, were exactly what we needed. 5 days before the wedding, we put the next phase into action. The bridesmaids and I announced we were treating Emma to a surprise spa day, a last-minute addition to the wedding festivities. The real surprise was that while Emma was being pampered, we were executing a carefully coordinated plan with Janet and Chris. Janet, armed with power of attorney and documentation from their lawyer, was freezing and recovering what remained of Emma's accounts before Tyler could drain them completely. Chris was confronting Tyler with evidence of his fraud, demanding repayment of his money. The wedding planner, Melissa, was quietly canceling vendors while making it look like simple pre-wedding adjustments. But then something happened that none of us had anticipated. Tyler panicked. Instead of trying to maintain his facade, he made a fatal mistake. He logged into Emma's email account, something she'd given him access to for wedding planning, and tried to cancel everything himself, including sending a mass email to all guests calling off the wedding and blaming Emma's emotional instability. That's when our group chat exploded with urgent messages. Emma, still at the spa, had received notification alerts on her phone. She was calling and texting all of us in hysterics. Meanwhile, Rachel, who'd been monitoring the situation from Miami, chose this moment to post a photo of herself wearing an engagement ring, the same ring Tyler had told Emma was a family heirloom he'd given to her. Everything was unraveling faster than we'd planned. As I raced to the spa to deal with Emma, I realized we were past the point of careful execution. It was time for the nuclear option, one that would either salvage this situation or destroy every relationship involved. What happened in the next 48 hours would become the stuff of local legend, complete with viral social media posts, police involvement, and an unexpected ally who would help us deliver the perfect revenge. I found Emma crumpled on the floor of the spa's relaxation room, her face buried in her hands, surrounded by concerned staff members. The time for secrets was over. Right there, with mud masks still on our faces, I told her everything. The Miami condo, Rachel's ongoing relationship with Tyler, the financial fraud, and how we'd been working behind the scenes to protect her. What happened next showed me a side of Emma I hadn't seen in months. Instead of the hysterical breakdown I expected, her face hardened with cold fury. The entitled bridezilla persona melted away, replaced by the strong, strategic friend I'd known for years. Through tears, she admitted she'd noticed Tyler's suspicious behavior, but had been too afraid to acknowledge it, instead throwing herself into wedding details to avoid facing the truth. Then Emma revealed something that changed our entire plan. She discovered she was pregnant 2 weeks ago, but hadn't told anyone yet, not even Tyler. She'd been waiting for the perfect moment during their honeymoon to share the news. This revelation turned our revenge mission into something far more personal and urgent. Our group now included Emma, and she proved to be the mastermind we didn't know we needed. She suggested we move forward with the wedding preparations as if nothing had happened, but with some crucial modifications. Instead of canceling vendors, we repurposed them. The venue would still be used, the flowers would still be delivered, and the guests would still arrive, but not for the wedding Tyler expected. 3 days before the wedding, Emma's parents sent out a mass email to all guests, explaining there had been technical issues with the previous cancellation notice and confirming the event was still on. Tyler, who had been desperately trying to control the narrative, seemed relieved when Emma acted devastated but forgiving about his email account being hacked. Ashley's real estate contacts proved invaluable once again. They discovered that Rachel had already started moving her belongings into the Miami condo, perfectly timed with the wedding weekend. Emma insisted we let her continue, knowing it would prevent Rachel from coming to Aspen to disrupt our plans. The next 48 hours were a blur of activity. Olivia coordinated with the wedding planner to make subtle but significant changes to the ceremony setup. Madison worked with her media contacts to ensure certain moments would be, coincidentally, captured and shared. I focused on Emma, supporting her through waves of anger and grief, while helping her prepare for what would become the most memorable performance of her life. As guests began arriving in Aspen, none of them suspected that the lavish wedding welcome bags contained more than just luxury chocolates and spa vouchers. Each package included a carefully curated collection of evidence copies of bank statements, photos, real estate documents, and a detailed timeline of Tyler's deception, all set to be opened at a very specific moment. The rehearsal dinner became the stage for the first act of our carefully orchestrated revenge. Tyler stood at the front of the room, preparing to give his groom's speech, completely unaware that in less than 24 hours, his entire world would implode in front of 200 witnesses. The morning of the wedding arrived with perfect, crisp mountain air and fresh snow, exactly the winter wonderland setting Emma had dreamed of. But instead of preparing the bride for her walk down the aisle, we were executing the final phase of our plan. The bridesmaids and I gathered in Emma's suite, each of us assigned specific roles in what was about to unfold. Tyler's morning started with an unexpected crisis when Chris, accidentally, lost the rings. This kept him distracted while Janet orchestrated the distribution of our specially prepared welcome bags to the guests as they took their seats. Emma's father, now fully aware of everything, stationed himself at the venue entrance, personally ensuring every guest received their package with instructions not to open them until signaled. The ceremony was scheduled for 2 p.m. At 1:45, as Tyler waited nervously at the altar, Emma sent him a text saying she was having last-minute dress issues but would be there soon. What he didn't know was that she was actually in the venue security room with the wedding planner, watching multiple screens that showed every angle of the ceremony space. At exactly 2 p.m., instead of the traditional wedding march, the string quartet began playing a somber melody. I walked down the aisle alone, carrying a small tablet. The confused murmurs from the guests grew louder as the other bridesmaids followed, each of us taking our places not beside the altar, but in front of it, facing the guests. The wedding planner dimmed the lights, and a projector screen lowered behind Tyler. His face went ashen as photos began to appear him and Rachel at the Miami condo, the fake mortgage applications, bank statements showing the transferred wedding funds. Each image was met with gasps from the audience. That's when Emma's voice filled the room through the speaker system. Without showing herself, she calmly narrated Tyler's deception, ending with the revelation of her pregnancy and his attempt to steal her family's money. As she spoke, ushers distributed champagne flutes to every guest, filled not with champagne, but with copies of Tyler's fraudulent documents. The final blow came when Rachel herself appeared on the screen via a live video call from the Miami condo, unaware she was being broadcast to the entire wedding. She was in the middle of a heated rant about how Tyler had promised this would be their home after he dealt with this wedding nonsense. The look of horror on Tyler's face, as he realized his perfectly constructed lies were crumbling around him, was something I'll never forget. What happened next went viral on social media within hours. Tyler, attempting to flee the scene, found himself blocked by Chris and several other groomsmen, who had switched sides after learning the truth. Emma's father was already on the phone with police, reporting the financial fraud. But it was the guests' reaction that truly made this moment unforgettable. 200 people, many of them Tyler's colleagues and professional connections, simultaneously opened their evidence packets, creating a tsunami of shock, disgust, and outrage that would haunt Tyler's reputation forever. The aftermath of that day in Aspen unfolded like a series of dominoes. Tyler was escorted out by security, his professional reputation in shambles, as videos of the event spread across social media platforms. The hospital where he worked launched an immediate investigation into his credentials, leading to his suspension from the residency program. Rachel, mortified by her unwitting role in the exposure, quickly sold her story to several media outlets, trying to paint herself as another victim of Tyler's manipulation. Emma transformed the would-be reception into an impromptu, dodged a bullet celebration, complete with the gourmet catering and premium bar we'd all paid for. The guests, still processing the dramatic events, rallied around her with overwhelming support. Several of Tyler's own relatives approached her with tearful apologies, sharing their own stories of his past deceptions they'd previously kept quiet. The financial aftermath took months to untangle. Thanks to Janet's quick action and the documented evidence of fraud, Emma's family recovered most of their money. Tyler's attempts to access the Miami condo were thwarted by the fraud investigation, leaving both him and Rachel empty-handed. Chris successfully sued for the return of his $30,000, though collecting it would prove to be a long-term process. As for the bridesmaids, our unity in this ordeal strengthened our friendship in unexpected ways. Emma, once she processed her grief and anger, became increasingly grateful for our intervention. She insisted on repaying every cent we'd spent on her wedding, despite our protests. More importantly, she returned to being the caring, thoughtful friend we'd known before the engagement. 6 months later, Emma gave birth to a beautiful baby girl. The nursery was decorated with contributions from every guest who had attended the non-wedding, turning what could have been a bitter memory into a celebration of new beginnings. Instead of lost deposits and debt, we now had a story that would be told at girls' nights for years to come. The venue in Aspen even offered Emma a complimentary weekend for her daughter's first birthday, impressed by how she'd handled the situation. They'd apparently never seen a canceled wedding turn into such a positive event, and the publicity had actually increased their bookings. Tyler's life took a different turn. His attempts to practice medicine in other states were complicated by the professional misconduct investigation. Last we heard, he was working as a pharmaceutical sales representative in Nevada, his dreams of being a renowned pediatrician shattered by his own deception. Rachel ended up writing a self-published book about toxic relationships, though it never gained much traction. As for me, this experience changed how I approach friendship and trust. I learned that sometimes being a true friend means risking the relationship to protect someone from harm. Emma and I are closer than ever, our bond strengthened by surviving this ordeal together. She's back to her old self, focused on motherhood and rebuilding her life, with the full support of the friends who stood by her on what should have been her wedding day. The revenge we orchestrated wasn't just about exposing a fraud or stopping a wedding, it was about reclaiming power, protecting someone we loved, and showing that sometimes the strongest bonds are forged in the moments when everything seems to be falling apart. And yes, I still have that unused Louis Vuitton bridesmaid bag. Emma and I use it to pack supplies for our monthly spa days, turning what was once a symbol of excess into a reminder of friendship's triumph over betrayal.